This is a Film Stories original podcast.
Welcome to the X-Cast, X-Files Podwatch, episode 15, covering Sleepless and Duane Barry. I'm your host, Zach Moore, and with me today is Baz Greenland. What's up, Baz?
Hi, how are you?
Great, man. You know, we haven't had a chance to talk the X-Files together before. That's part of the fun of this Podwatch.
Oh, it's the first time, yeah. No, this will be my third Podwatch, but the first one we're calling together.
Excellent. Yeah, I've been doing quite a few. I was maybe a little overzealous with how many I signed up to do. So
yeah, I'm gonna say I've got a fair few that I'm enjoying as the series goes on as well. Yeah, quite a big fan myself.
Well, we got a couple great episodes here to talk about today, but we'll jump into it. Our first episode is Sleepless, which aired on October 7th, 1994. It was written by Howard Gordon and directed by Rob Bowman. So, Baz, what are your thoughts on Sleepless?
It's a good episode. I think it's not as good as Duane Barry, which was nice to admit, but Duane Barry is kind of one of the highlights of the season. I think it's got a lot of firsts. Really, it's kind of one that it's a first Krychek one, the first time that Mr. X appears face to face, and it's kind of got that quasi mythology to it with that and the smoke vampire at the end as well. It's I think the actual episode itself is it's very, very dark, very gritty, and it's kind of got the urban feel of Candyman. Of course, Tony Todd is the bad guy in this. But I think Tony Todd aside, what I remember are the things like Mr. X and Krychek and kind of how everything starts to come together before the big abduction arc.
Yeah, this episode on the surface, it might seem like a middle of the road freak of the week, monster of the week episode, but it does introduce some major players in the flesh, like Mr. X. We heard him on the phone before. Now we meet Krychek for the first time. And obviously Cigarette Smoking Man is in there, as you said. So they're really building the stable of supporting characters that flesh out the universe of the X-Files, and that's awesome. And, Tony Todd, speaking in, he's a great character actor. And he's probably, to me, he's most famous for his roles on Star Trek. He's played a couple roles on Star Trek. He's obviously the Candyman, as you mentioned. And I actually met him once at a Star Trek convention. He's like the nicest guy. So,
well, because he's quite forbidden in everything he plays, isn't he?
Yeah, it's one of those classic things where like the nicest guys play the most terrible people. But even in this episode, he's the villain, but I mean his motivations are understandable, right? He's not just out and out evil guy. He's been pushed over the brink.
It's really the kind of military and doctors that are the bad guys, essentially, aren't they? The people that he's killing are really the bad guys, and that's what's interesting about it. It's kind of grey. It's a whole grey area based what he's doing. I think he's not out to just murder innocent people. He's out there to take revenge on the people that have basically traumatized him for years and years and years. And I think even though what he and his fellow soldiers did in Vietnam is absolutely horrific, you can kind of understand that, like them, he was pushed to the absolute edge and he's completely broken. And this is really about him trying to get closure on the whole ordeal.
Right, and even at the end, it's not like he wants to get his revenge on these guys and then go on to live his life. He pretty much causes his own death by planting an image in Krychek's head, right?
Yeah, that's I guess what makes it memorable is that the plot itself is not the most strongest plot. I think it's an interesting idea that's maybe not as engaging as it could be, but I do like his story. I like how you do kind of feel for him in the end, really, and it's he's not someone you want to cross, certainly, but I think the fact that it's almost quite a bittersweet ending for him. The fact that he dies, eventually he sleeps forever, is kind of the ultimate goal for him. So it's a really kind of nice way to wrap it up.
Yeah. The pseudoscience here is a little much, even for the X-Files, though. I mean, basically turning people into, well, Freddy Kruegers, insomniac Freddy Kruegers, no less. So, I mean, he hadn't slept in, years and years. Like, that's, I don't know. I think the human body would break down. I don't care what kind of pseudoscience you have going on.
I think that's where it does fall down, because it's not it's quite uncomfortable, some quite dark stuff in there as well, but it's shot very dark as well. It's not easy viewing. It's not not like X-Files. Obviously, X-Files can be quite dark and scary as well, but I think it's that kind of gritty urban feel to it. It means it's not one you can just casually stick on and kind of just switch off. You kind of got to immerse yourself in this kind of darkness. But yeah, I think that the idea of someone, who hasn't slept for years and years and years, you almost feel it doesn't go far enough. If that's what it really is, it isn't gone far enough. But it's it is definitely a stretch.
Well, this is also one of these small pockets of the X-Files where Krycek is portraying himself as a good guy. So that was very interesting to see. He comes in this this fresh face, like eager to please agent who's a supporter and fan of Mulder, and then at the end, I was wondering, rewatching these, you forget like when certain things are revealed, and you're like, oh, okay, well, does he keep this act up for a while? Do we think he's a good guy to a certain point? It's like, no. At the end of the episode, they just reveal it all, that he's working for Cigarette Smoking Man. I'm like, that's refreshing.
I guess the thing about the whole arc through the X-Files being closed to Sky's abduction, you kind of remember it going on for episodes and episodes and episodes. Season 2, this is about the time I came into the X-Files watching it the first time round. And I think it feels a lot longer than it is. Scully's only gone for one episode, for example, but it feels much, much longer. And I think, you remember, Krycek was his partner for 2 or 3 episodes, then you found out he's bad, and then Scully got abducted and she was gone for a couple of episodes, then she came back. Actually, no, it's all the space of like 4 episodes. And I think it was a bit of a mistake. I think while it was kind of the right level of time for the X-Files to be closed, which is about 8 episodes, it feels like they made Krycek quite likeable. Mulder's a bit of a dick to him, really, in the other episode, and which you kind of find a bit of respect because obviously who Krycek is and what he does later on. But he's an eager, fresh-faced, and I kind of think it would have been better maybe if he'd come in the episode previously, and maybe had there been another episode before the reveal. So I think it would have been better had he had 2 or 3 episodes, and you go, you know what? Actually, he's quite a nice guy. Kind of like what he did with Doggett came in later season 8 and said, I'm not going to like him, but actually you grew to like him a lot. Obviously, he was a good guy. I think they could have done the same with Krycek. They could have made Krycek this really likable, good guy. Maybe save. I mean, he does kind of save Mulder here, but maybe he proves himself, and Mulder goes, "Oh, okay, he's not so bad," and he meets Scully and stuff, and then it kind of builds and builds and builds, and then shock, he's evil. That would have been better had it been a number of episodes. The fact that it happens at the end of his first episode feels very, very rushed.
I see your point, and that would have been another perfectly good way to do it. But I guess I found the extra layer of now knowing, moving on from this episode, oh man, Krycek's not what he appears to be. He's playing Mulder. He's playing all these guys. That was engaging enough. So yeah, I can definitely see either way. But as the Cigarette Smoking Man says at the end, every problem has a solution.
Yeah, it sets up the abduction arc really, really well.
Yeah,
I think.
All right, the next episode we're talking about today, one of the most iconic, most important, and most fondly remembered episodes of the entire series, dare I say, Duane Barry, which aired on October 14th, 1994, and was written and directed by Chris Carter. How about that, huh?
Yeah, I mean, he was quite a good director as well. I think obviously his reputation has gone down slightly in lieu of what's happened in season 10, I think.
Yes.
But he's a great ideas man, and this is a fantastic episode. It is one of the best. Some great, very suspenseful, very tense, great performances, and it's the first time the X-Files has actual proper. I mean, the season 1 ended with a cliffhanger, but that was the end of season, so it's kind of expected. This was the first time an episode ended with to be continued. It's a great introduction into the whole abduction arc. Really, it's brilliant overall. I think Chris Carter is a really good writer and director. When he gets it right, like Duane Barry, he is amazing. I think it's just people don't always remember that when you think of the later stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. This episode, I mean, we could talk about for an hour, but we'll try to keep it as brief as we can. So, at the beginning of this episode, I found rewatching these episodes in HD, it kind of betrays some of the alien costumes. You can actually see how they're costumes and not real creatures. But I have a fan theory about this. You could interpret them as quote unquote, in-universe costumes, because later on we do see that government agents do dress up as the alien Greys, so that's how I choose to justify it, Baz.
That's an interesting idea. I think the whole thing about aliens anyway, it's everything about these delusions, the because the opening sequence in the episode, when you see that the aliens appear in the walls and the UFO above, that's the most blatant they've ever been at this point. And then when the aliens appear at the hospital at the end, and what I like about the episode is it's never quite clear whether this is actually happening or whether it's part of his delusion. And I think if it could be delusional, you can kind of get whether anything then is how he's interpreted it. He obviously does get abducted and he goes through these ordeals, but as you find out later on, particularly with Scully herself, she's not abducted by aliens as such. She's abducted by some Japanese businessmen and doctors and transported on a train. So it's very different to what you assume happens here. And I think for Duane Barry, it's how he interprets it. So I think you can kind of get away with the kind of the hokiness of the aliens in the episode.
Right. And speaking of the character himself, Duane Barry, played by Steve Railsback. Now, he did a great job in this episode and the follow-up, I think, creating a memorable performance, sympathetic character, unhinged. You never know what he's going to do next. But you, again, much like Tony Todd in the last episode, you relate to this guy's motivations, because he has been abducted. He has, no one's believed him. He's been told he's crazy, but he knows he's not. Well, he might have some delusions, but something has happened to him. He has access to grind. But interestingly enough, this episode got a lot of accolades, and one of them was outstanding guest performance, Emmy nomination for CCH Pounder, who was great in this episode. I love her as the voice of Amanda Waller in all the DC animated TV shows and movies, so that's what I always relate her to. But if you're going to give the Emmy to somebody, give it to Railsback in this episode, right? Or a nomination, I should say.
CCH Pounder, she's great in what she does, and she's brilliant here. She has that wonderful line to Krychek when she goes, you ask if we can help, and she goes, "Get your notepad and ask for a coffee." It's brilliant.
It's so good.
She's a character. I would love to see more of her. It would be nice if she could have popped up again or continue through the story. It's a shame she's only a one episode character, but she's such a memorable presence to her, and she's completely in charge of the situation. And you can see that when Mulder starts to engage with Duane Barry about his own sister's abduction and his belief in aliens, you can see that kind of that's trying to take control over the situation. But she's still, in the end, when she finds those metal fragments in Duane Barry as part of the test, she realises that maybe there's some truth to it. So she does bring this well-rounded character, and she's absolutely memorable. But you're right, Railsback is amazing. I think he plays, you're right, he plays a very unhinged, very deranged, violent, paranoid, but never once does he really feel hammy, and it could so easily have been a really hammy character, a really hammy performance. But because, he's constantly unhinged, he knows he's going to be dragged away at any point, he's trying to save himself, he's trying to get people to believe him, and I think in the end he realised that it is all true, whether it's aliens or the government. He has been abducted. He has had metal implants put in him. He's been essentially tortured over and over again for many, many years. And that's regardless of how that Scully later on refers to the accident, where he got shot in the head, which was that famous case back from the late 19th century with the guy who essentially completely changed personality after he got was it a railroad spike through his head or something?
Yeah, that was one of the inspirations for Chris Carter to write this character. Yeah. And
you see that there, and you see this man has been changed essentially by abduction, by the accident. He's generally a nice guy who's gone through hell.
Wrapping up the CCH Pounder character, I did one of my favorite exchanges in this episode, and just epitomizes Mulder as a character. She asks Mulder, "You really believe in this stuff, Agent Mulder?" And he says, "Is that a problem?" That is so good. That's like Mulder's career in a nutshell, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Oh man, but yeah, great performances, great moments all around this episode. And then the end, I had to laugh about Scully scanning the implant at the grocery store, right, with the barcode. I thought that was pretty amazing. But even more amazing to me was the fact that she was buying all those groceries for only $11 and paying by check. If that doesn't say the 90s, I don't know what does.
Oh yeah, that really does date the episode. But yeah, it's quite funny. But it's a great scene, I think. And you wonder, would she really kind of be that stupid? Sure, there's stuff at the FBI, but I guess it's nothing you just do on instinct. And it's a really great, really kind of tense moment that suddenly, what the hell has she got on her?
Right.
And of course, it leaves Duane Barry to and the brilliant cliffhanger as well.
Absolutely. Oh man, so that's gosh, as I said, you're just trying to distill your thoughts down with the great episode into a small window of time. But you and I are not going to be talking about Ascension. But real quick, Baz, which of the two episodes do you think is better, or are they equal in your book, Duane Barry or Ascension?
I think they're kind of equal because this one is very, very intense, very kind of insular because it's all about Duane Barry and Mulder and all the stuff with the hostage situation is fantastic and tense and gritty, and you're there every step of the way. Ascension is amazing because it has the big set pieces. It has the rail car scene when Mulder's hanging it off as he's trying to get up the mountain, and Krycek turning traitor, and the whole pursuit of Scully as well. There was some amazing stuff that one, and of course he loses, and that's the big twist that Scully should be saved at that point, and she isn't. And there's a lot to that. So, but I mean, that one's grander. That's almost like a season finale, whereas this one is a very intense and very insular. You can absorb yourself in it. So, I think they're both great in different ways in a way.
Yeah, they're very, very different episodes, so it's hard to compare them. They complement each other very well, and I feel like a lot of X-Files two-parters do that very well. Each part's very different. So they're hard to compare because, a lot of times you have a great setup in a part one like this, and then it's hard to follow it up and pay it off, right? But the payoff of this episode just sets up even more stuff down the road. I mean, the events of this episode echo onto the rest of the series, So that's a very big milestone in the whole show.
It is. And I wonder if June Anderson hadn't fallen pregnant, would we have got something as great as this? I don't know. I wonder where the series would have gone because I think this was such a bold moment in the show. And really so early on in the show's history, that I think it's almost like Scully's. I'm sorry, Scully. Julian Anderson's pregnancy was kind of in some way one of the best things that ever happened to the show because it gave Chris Clark could have done anything. He could have written a baby into the show, which very very ever works in any kind of TV show ever.
Although they did do that later.
They did, and it worked. Season 8 I love. Season 9 I love everything that doesn't involve William. So and how it ended. I think they could have brought the baby in the show. It's far too soon to do that anyway. They could have tried to do the classic cover it up, which they did in season 1 and most of this one. There's a lot of sitting down in big coats,
right?
And they could have done that. And they probably could have worked it around that. They could have an episode, for example, where Scully wasn't there because they're not working together. But I think he just thought, let's use it. Let's use her absence. And it worked perfectly.
Yeah, I love that in fiction, be it movies, TV shows, when they have to incorporate something out of their control, but then spin it into a story direction they never would have done otherwise. And it turns out better than what they would have come up with, because you're right. Who knows? Who knows what the mythology would have been or anything like that? So just incredible how real life can influence fiction.
And most importantly, he brought Scully into mythology. Up to that point, she was just the partner, in a sense. Mulder had the passion. He had the family. He had the family wasn't really around this point. He had the informants. He had assisted abduction. Scully didn't have any of that. So this is what really brought her into the mythology. It was the best movie I ever did.
All right, Baz, well, it's been fun talking about these episodes of The X-Files with you today. If people want to find you out there on the internet, where can they find you?
Okay, so on Twitter, I'm at Baz Greenland. I'm a Baz Greenland writer, Facebook page, and you can also follow me at The Digital Fix.
Awesome. As for me, you can find me personally on Twitter at MooreOnZach. That's MooreOnZach. I'm also the host of my own podcast, Always Full in the Smallville, where we talk about each and every episode of that young Superman show. We're on Twitter at Always Smallville. And I'm also the host of Standard Orbit, a Star Trek original series podcast. You can find us on Twitter at TrekFM. As for the Xcast, you can find us on Twitter at the X_cast. We're on Facebook at the Xcast X-Files Podcast Fan Group. So just search the Xcast on Facebook and you can find us there. Well, the Podwatch will be back tomorrow covering Ascension in 3. But until then, trust no one.